Welcome to our Monday morning, 11 a.m. Intellese Power BI Builder webinar with the data wizard himself, Kyle Souza, and myself, Chris Pettigrew from Intellese and PMP Oil and Gas Solutions. We're glad you guys joined us today. We have a pretty large segment of people still kind of joining in, but we're going to have more and more people come in as they go. So let's go ahead and get this party started. Kyle, it looks like you've already loaded up some information here. I know that we have had a couple of webinars over the past couple of months. We've covered oil and gas revenue and expenses with Power BI. We have covered production and volume with Power BI. And today we are going to cover creating land reports and land information also with Power BI. Now, something that I want everybody to, I think is a real important piece with this is that if you have Power BI or you've taken some courses, you can definitely learn how to build and use this on your own. And that's part of what our webinars are all about is actually taking data and building out Power BI reports with that data. Just of course, like, I'll always tell you the data has to be clean. Your data has to make sense. You need to make sure that your data is right. So part of today's webinar is actually pulling data from an Excel spreadsheet. Being that we are doing that, that allows you to take the land information that is out there that you may have captured in Excel. Maybe you don't have a land system. Maybe you're operating on your own, or you've taken something from your acquisition and you're just managing what the old people gave you. Either way, you don't have a land system. If you do have a land system and you're using one of the majors that are out there, almost every one of those allow you to export data into Excel or CSV to create your own custom reports. So if you want to be able to have some more control and be able to use your information from your existing land system or your land data, Power BI is a great tool for doing that. And that's what we are going to show you guys today. So my name's Chris Pettigrew. I've been in the oil and gas business for my entire life, I'd say, but seriously, the past over 25 years. At the end of the day, I grew up in land, so this is a really cool ability to show you guys some stuff that over 25 years we've been doing in Excel and been doing a lot of this, making custom reports for many, many different systems, not having as much cool insight as what we're going to show today. So I'm really excited about this webinar. And my counterpart that's joining us today is Kyle Souza, the data wizard from Intellese. Kyle and I have been together for quite a long time with PMP and Intellese, and he's always been my guy to whip up all the cool land reports that, make us shine at the end of the day. So do your work, get your data right, and then it's time to show the report. So Kyle, I'm going to pass it off on to you and let you take the driver's wheel and show us what you've been working on with Power BI.
All right, very cool. Thank you, Chris. I was just going to start with a quick little recap of what we looked at before we get into the new stuff for today. And so we took our revenue check data and just started looking at what are we getting paid on. This data set, it's mostly oil, a little bit of natural gas, a little bit of residue gas. We started looking at things month over month, look at how our interest was brought up. There's mostly royalty interest, a little bit override, a little bit of working interest, what kind of taxes and deductions are being taken out. We got into a more detailed view with things being broken out as far as, again, just looking at data from that revenue check, helping it make sense. Then we started looking at our JIB or joint interest billing statements and seeing how, hey, we got a lot of costs going to saltwater disposal, then facilities, then contract drilling. But if we kind of grouped them into major categories, it's more than half operating expense, then our service expenses, and our downhole well expenses. And we just, pulled up a couple of fake wells here, right? All based on real data, but we've changed the names to protect the innocent. Then we started looking at some AFE data. Or no, we haven't got to the AFE data yet. Sorry, this is the JIB versus revenue comparison. This is where we can see, hey, all of our wells are profitable, but some are more profitable than others. 81% of what we got paid on one well, we spent on that same well. Maybe that one's not one that we want to keep around too long in the portfolio, but making money is making money, right? Then we did get into the AFE data, and we just started taking a look. Yeah, spreadsheets are great. We're going to be looking at one here in just a moment for some land data. And so we mimic a spreadsheet up at the top, but then we can start seeing, hey, out of this invoice, because you'll get invoiced for multiple properties on a single jib, you know, what is it going to? So we start looking at which wells getting the most of our money there, a portion of the AFE. Then we looked at some production data, this coming from the revenue statements, and we can see here's a little recreation of our spreadsheet, or at least part of it. And then we could start seeing that, hey, even though we're mostly making money off of oil, we actually have a large amount of residue gas production. And we looked at it by well, we looked at it over time, got some good charts so we could just track our production a little bit. Then we compared that to the actual production from the well, not just the volume sold. Brought in some data from well database and started seeing how our production looked month over month for our properties. And then we compared what was sold to what was produced, and could see that for our oil, we're right on target. Gas, they're not necessarily selling everything they're producing, and there's multiple reasons that that could be for, but Power BI here is about getting information so you could see if there's something you need to ask questions about or dig more into. And then we pulled up a little map with just, here's all of our well spots, again, location data from well database, and then pulled in some data from the revenue statements, pulled in some data from the well spreadsheet, and nice little color coding based on the well type. So that brings us to today, and I'm going to start a new page inside this report, page number 10, and we're going to look at some land data. So I've got this spreadsheet here. This is a lease schedule by Tract for me. With well data, I can see I've got my lease bonus information on here. I've got my royalty rates. I've got my recording info, gross acres, net acres, all that by lease, of course, lessor and lessee, a couple of special provision columns. And then I get into my tract information. So one thing that's important, Chris is saying, you got to get your spreadsheets right. If we look at these top rows and we look back at our leftmost column, actually the top 4 rows are all from the same lease ID. Well, why are they from the same lease ID? Why do we have multiple rows? When it gets into it, we have multiple tracts on that lease. So we got different tracts, different interests in that same lease. So want to just be understanding of how your data is organized so that you know how it's going to need to be manipulated inside of Power BI. All right. So we won't deal too much with this spreadsheet from here on out after we bring into Power BI, but we do have just about 1,300 rows of data inside this one, which is a good amount. We've definitely seen bigger ones, but it is a good amount of data. All right. Inside Power BI, easy way to add Excel spreadsheets. We come up here to our Home tab. We choose an Excel workbook. And now I'm bringing in my lease data master sheet. Power BI is going to connect to it and import that data. Now you can do live connections and you can do import. The import ends up moving faster at the end of the day, and with spreadsheets, live data can be dangerous, but we're just going to do the import method because it's the default and we're doing things just quick and easy here on this webinar. All right, so it brought it, oh, wait, no, that's my AFE. Where are we? Lease and Tract data report, here we are. So I can see all those same columns that I had in my spreadsheet. They're alphabetized, but they're all right here. And let's just understand a little bit of what's in this data set. I like to create kind of like a land overview where I can see what information at a quick glance might be important to me. So if I come in here, I'm going to do a card visual, and that is just a piece of information. You can think of a card as just one piece of info. And let's get our count of lease IDs on here. That's just going to tell me how many leases do I have in my system. So I'm changing that to count distinct, and I've got 462 lease IDs here. Okay, tells me how many active leases I have. Now, there is another type of card visual that I really like. So I'm going to take this card and I'm just going to copy and paste it, Control C, Control V, nothing crazy. And I'm going to come over here, I'm going to change it to the new card visual that they have. And there's two big differences between the card and the new card. It's not just that they put the label above the number. No, it's more than that. It is that on the new card, you can add multiple pieces of data or multiple indicators, KPIs, to one card, and you also get a couple style choices. You can start making it look pretty. So let's see what else we might want to see on here. You know, this is a lease schedule by tract. So we got our lease count on there. Let's get our tract count. And so by just dragging my tract ID over here and switching it to count, I can now start seeing, okay, here's how many leases I have, how many tracts I have, and it's all in one visual. So it just becomes a little bit easier to manage. If I wanted to add tract ID to my first one, it actually changes it. You can't have two. So we're just going to get rid of that old one. We're going to have our new one here. I'll drag it all the way across. Let's see, something else that's real important, not knowing just how many leases you have, how many tracts you have, are going to be your net acres. So let's take a look here. We got our tract net acres. Let's sum that up. So we're dealing with a little under 15,000 net acres across 462 leases. Good deal. You know, let's take a look at some styling options. Inside of this visualization section, you have your data builder, you have your formatting, and then you have your analysis, which we won't get into for this webinar at all, but certain visuals have some advanced analysis that you can do with them. All right, let's see. What if we came in here, maybe changed our numbers here? Let's see, we want to use whole numbers. Yeah, we're good. Okay, let's see. Maybe we want to take this out to multiple decimal places so we can specify exactly how many decimals we want to go to. Or if you want to round it off to no decimals. We've got that as an option. We can change colors if we like how things look. You know, if we want to make it look a little fancy, make it a little bit lighter here, adding some transparency to it. And so this is just a matter of trying to make things look nice, stand out, how you want them to. And you've got lots of options for just making things look good. If you're familiar with image sizing or some basic HTML, then you know, position and padding and all that kind of thing come into play. So just wanted to let you guys know that those options are available. All right, let's take a look at maybe some comparisons. How about we get a pie chart in here? I like pie charts, those are fun. And let's take a look at our producing versus non-producing acres. So we're going to take our net developed and net undeveloped, and we're going to rename them. Some of tract net developed and some of tract net undeveloped. That's just a long name. Let's rename it for this visual. Producing. You know what? Let's put a capital P on there. Non-producing. We don't need that to be quite as big as it is. Let's make that a little bit smaller. Got producing versus non-producing. Make it a little bit bigger this way. There we go. So we can start seeing how much of our acreage is going to be moving into HBP or may already be HBP'd versus how much we might need to consider some expirations on. One of the things we are going to talk about is some expirations here in just a moment. But let's keep looking a little bit more. This breakdown of the producing. Let's do another kind of chart. This one's a donut chart, very similar to a pie chart. Both of them are based on baked goods, right? Now, both of them are fun to look at, but can also be informative for us. And I'm actually going to make this one a little bit bigger just because I know the kind of data it has coming into it. And we're going to add our wells to our legend here. And then we're going to take a look back at that sum of net acres, and we're going to see how much acreage is associated with each well. So this tells me, hey, most of my acreage is not assigned to a well. So that's blank. Okay, that's a red flag to me. Why do I have acres in my spreadsheet that are producing that are not associated with the well? If I can go back to my spreadsheet here and I start looking around, this is where knowing your data comes in and that data quality and stuff we were talking about. So I've got my well names, and I want to filter to all the blank ones. Here we go. And then I start looking at my acres. I see, yeah, there are a lot of undeveloped acres, but there are also some developed acres that don't have a well name associated with it. So that's just, a flag to keep in mind there. One thing we can do is we can add a slicer if we want to filter, or you can get a little advanced because the slicers are a way to filter everything on the report. If you want to, on a specific visual, exclude something all the time, you can come into this filters panel and remove it. Let's remove those. And this way we're looking just at our net acres. Oh, wait, did I do sum of tract net acres or net developed acres? There we go. Sum of net developed acres would be a better one to do. Still have that blank data, but you can see it's still a lot less because I'm using my net developed acres. But we're just going to hide that for now. And now all I'm looking at are the net developed acres that are associated with a well. That's up to you if you want to do that filtering. May or may not be useful.
So Kyle, let me step in for a second. What's important here is you can be a different kind of Power BI builder. Somebody like myself who is very land oriented. I could be building here in Power BI. Kyle brought up the fact that there were some developed tracks that were connected or not connected to wells. Maybe you're the one to solve this problem. if you're not, driving it from a land aspect and you're not building your own Power BI reports, maybe you're using a developer or somebody on your tech team, what are some of the behaviors that you can do if you're just on the tech team and you see these kind of issues? I think that you should take the opportunity to bring them up to the appropriate parties. Whenever you start to look through data and you start to show different information of data, it starts to show the defects of the data that's out there. And so right here, we found some defects in the data. So Kyle may be able to go back and solve his own problems if he's building it because he's controlling land. He's also controlling the data. But if you're working with other team members, it's good to have cross comparisons and talk to those other team members. Don't just go back as a data person and show that there's a developed to the well, and blast that out as the final. I think that's something that you should bring up ahead of time to see if we can get that data cleaned up to produce a final version that is more accurate. So good catch there, Kyle.
Yeah.
It's nice that you saw that.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's good to, these things, right? Power BI isn't about manipulating data, it's about viewing data, and this helps you mind your P's and Q's. Let's see, we had an acquisition code in our spreadsheet. So I'm going to do a visual. This visual is a bold visual, in my opinion. It's a kind of visual that really grabs people's attention, and it's called a tree map. And the tree map really helps show proportions in maybe a more surprising way than our pie chart or donut chart might. And so what I'm going to do here is I will use just the regular Tract net acres. You can see I'm a Tract-based stat, so I use a lot of Tract net acres here. I'm going to bring those in as my values, and then I'm going to take, and I want to separate my Tract net acres by acquisition code. So I use my ACQ code as my category, and now I can start seeing, okay, my Gotham acquisition is my biggest one. My Strigiforms Court, that one's smaller. And if I mouse over it, I can see the number. But this is where the styling comes into play. Let's add some data labels in there. You know what? Let's make these bigger. Maybe make them bold so we can start seeing, how very quickly what the relationship between these are. So we see, all right, the light blue is bigger than the dark blue, and that's bigger than the orange, and that's bigger than the purple, and it's bigger than the pink. But we have actual numbers associated with them. And there's more you can do to style these, but it's just like I said, a bold way to see how these numbers relate to each other. Now, one thing that's cool is you can now start clicking on visuals and they interact with each other. Like, let's say, for example, you're very interested in this Arkham acquisition. You click on Arkham, and I can see that's all non-producing acreage. And my numbers adjust over here. My lease count, my tract count, it all adjusts when I click on it. If I want to look at just my producing acreage, I can click over here on producing, and I can see how other things get affected. If I want to look just at this well, I can see that my Adam West H23 looks like it actually has some non-producing areas. So that's the inverse of the first problem we saw. It looks like this well is also attached to about 30 acres that in the database is currently marked as non-producing. So that's just a little bit of cleanup like Chris is talking about. So these start interacting with each other. Now, of course, one of the most important things you can do with land data is get an expiration report. So let's build out an expiration report. Then we're going to come back to that overview page in a minute. So expirations, spreadsheets are great for expiration reports. And the table visual inside of Power BI is really just a recreation of a spreadsheet. And so now we can add our table visual and then decide, well, what do we want to see? Well, you know what we're going to need? we're definitely going to need the lease date. And you can drag and drop. You can drag and drop onto the visual, or you can drag and drop onto this little columns box here. And you might like your dates separated by year, quarter, month. You could take out quarter if that doesn't matter to you. You can switch them to be a single date like this, and then you can style that date to be, 12/31/2024. There's a lot of options for styling, right? Let's keep going with our table build here, though. Probably be good to have a lease ID and a lease name on there so we know what leases we're talking about. Like to look at our gross acres. Oh, we got some lease gross acres here. We could see our net acres. Okay. Probably good to have our held by production acres in there. So let's add that. That way we can see, hey, this lease is expiring, but is it really, is that acreage at risk? Because right here, this lease, fully held by production. All right. That's easy to see. Here's a big one. Let's get our options to extend per acre in there. Which column was that? I think it was just called option to extend. Option to extend. And then if there is an option to extend, I'm going to want to know how much that's going to cost. So bonus to extend. What's the name of that column? There we go. And now I get an option to extend per acre. Okay, I've got some of these with extensions, some of these without extensions. You know what? I'm going to make this table a little smaller. And instead of adding a visual on it, I'm just going to come in here and put a text box right at the top. And let's just call this leases expiring in January 2025. And we're going to show a report that's just the lease is expiring in January 2025. Okay, well, how do we get this report to filter down? We use a slicer. So they call them slicers. When you add it to the visuals, we're going to put that right here. We don't want these overlapping. Maybe make the slicer a little bit smaller. And we want to be able to filter it based on our expiration date. So we put our expiration date in there. Now, if you want to do a report for just a specific county, you could do a county report. You could do a county slicer. But let's look just at January 2025. So anything expiring 1/1/25 through, oh, I went too far there by a year. 1/31/2025. Okay. So now I'm getting a report here that is just my acres expiring in January of 2025. I got almost 6,000 acres that could be at risk. Some of them have HBP acreage in full, like this one, or in part, like this one here. Some of them have options to extend, like this one. Some of them don't, like these. And so there's some options here. All right. You know what? I'm going to have different land people work on the leases that are expiring, that have expirations, and ones that don't have expirations. So I'm going to take and not going to rebuild the wheel. I'm just going to Control-C, Control-V on this visual. And now I've got a copy of it. And we're going to change some filters. And not the slicers, but the visual specific filter here. And we're going to filter it based on that option to extend. And in my top one, I want to see the ones that don't have options to extend. And then in my bottom one, I want to see the ones that only have options to extend. And then let's also take our text here. And let's insert another text box. Let's see, up for extension in January 2025. How about that? And we're gonna need to move that. It just kind of picks a place to put things whenever you click on a visual or some other object for the first time. You know what, let's make this a little bit bigger. How about that? There's a lot you can do on these if you wanted to get into all the aesthetic options. So we get a nice expiration report here. Now this, I can export to Excel. I come up in my right-hand corner, I say export data, and then I get a Excel spreadsheet. And I'll just say Jan 25 expire. And I come down to this table below it. Oh, it's thinking. There we go. And come down to this one, export data, Jan 25 extensions. I clicked on it, and remember how we were on the overview page, clicking on visuals, and it filtered the other visuals? Well, that's why that top part disappeared for me. Oh, where did I save those spreadsheets? I wasn't paying attention to where I exported them to. Let me see where I did that. Webinars, October, okay, good deal. There we go. And so now I've got just a little CSV spreadsheet. There we go, opened up on my other screen. And I can go give that to somebody, hey, here's the leases that are expiring. Now, I see here, there's a bonus to extend per acre coming from my spreadsheet. $300 an acre, $500 an acre, that makes sense. $1,600, that's a bit high. $2,649.65, that's a really specific number as an option to extend per acre. I now am not confident that these leases don't actually have options to extend, but also this option to extend per acre price may have been maybe the total price instead of the per acre price. Somebody may have done that calculation ahead of time, typing it in. These are things that can happen when you have multiple people doing data entry. Maybe somebody who's, we all have off days or just not paying attention like they should, right? So I'm starting to see, hey, there may be some other problems in my data, and I can ask whoever I give this spreadsheet to look into that. And when they give me an updated spreadsheet, I can reset it. I can refresh it. Let's see. Here we have the bonus to extend per acre. I see that there are ones with options to extend that don't have bonus values in here. So let's take a look at one of those. I want to show you how easy it is when somebody gives you updated data and you're tying it into Power BI, how easy it is to refresh it, re-upload it. So I'm just going to get this value here. Okay. I'm going to come into my spreadsheet here, and I'm going to find that lease ID that I just copied out. Okay. This one, it's a one-liner, part of our Oswald Cobblepot estate acquisition that we did. And let's find that bonus per acre column for the option to extend. Oh, some of these columns are a bit wide. It kind of jumped on me. Let me maybe make that a little bit smaller. Bonus to extend. Where are you? Here we go. So there is a bonus to extend per acre, and there is a total bonus to extend column. And then there's our original lease bonus amount, and those could all be different, right? So bonus to extend per acre, I'm just going to say, okay, we negotiated $500 with her. She negotiated that with us. I'm going to save my spreadsheet, minimize it, and now inside of Power BI, I'm going to come up to the table that I want. I click on my little options button, and I hit refresh data. All right, all my data has been reloaded. And now let's look at Susie's line, and I can see that info right there. So if I gave my spreadsheet to my land people, or if I'm the land person myself and I'm doing the research like Chris is saying he would do, I can go update it. I can come into Power BI and I can just hit refresh, and it updates everything for me. So if I do take those options to extend, and now I need to update the expiration date, those leases will automatically fall off of the 2025 expiration. But let's go back to our overview page here, because what is one piece of key info that we want to see are some of acres that might be expiring, right? So let's do another card, and I will do just the regular card this time, just to keep it easy. We won't get into all the fancy styling and stuff that you can do like we did up here with the new card. We have our regular card here. I guess you could do the new card and then not do the styling. That is an option. You don't have to go all the way with it. But let's take our lease net acres here. I want to see that. And then we're going to do a filter. And we want to filter not based on the sum of lease net acres. We're going to add a field just to our filter here. So let's pull up our lease expiration date. And then I'm going to do a relative filter for it. We come in here, we call relative date. And I want to see in the next 90 days, apply filter. This is how many acres I've got expiring in the next 90 days. And every day that number could change as something falls off and something gets added, right? As acreage gets secured and is no longer at risk of expiring, that number goes down. Or if we pass an expiration date and it expires, it goes down. But also as we progress into the future dates, that number will be bigger. Now, I don't have to do 90. I could do 365. I could do 120. Maybe I want to do a month plus a quarter. So, I can get in there. I've got a lot happening in 120 days. So in between the 90 and the 120 mark, there's a lot. All right. So we've got those. So just some stuff to show there. Let's take a look at a mapping option. I like maps. Maps are visual. I myself have a lot of mapping in my background. So I'm going to come in here, get my map icon. Now, if you have, I'm sorry, not field map, just a regular map. And then if you have ArcGIS Pro, there's some advanced mapping stuff that you can do, but we're going to keep it simple and just use the built-in one. And I am going to say, you know what? I need to bring in from my, where is it? Here we are. My well data from a prior webinar. I want to bring in my latitude. I want to bring in my longitude. And then, so that starts showing me my well spots. Now in my data from today, I've got a pew clause option. So let's see, I've got my pew status here. Let's put that in my legend, and that's going to start color coding things. Oh, again, error. It can't determine the relationship between these two tables. Let's take a look in our background here. So this is how things relate to each other, right? And we can see our land report that we brought in right here. It's not connected to anything. All I'm going to do is I'm going to go from my well name in my well database data to my well name in my land data. I like to make that bidirectional. And now I've got that little connector there. Let's go back to our visual. Look at that. So now what has automatically happened is that the map has gotten color coded, and you can come in here and start making these bubbles bigger, and you can add tooltips to them if you wanted to. We could have, let's see, we could add stuff from both. We could have our well name in the tooltips, and we could have our well type, and we could have our last month of oil and last month of gas in here. But then inside the same tooltip, maybe I also want to know, who am I leasing with these? Let's get a lease name on here. And so I can see that I've got multiple leases on some of these. This one, got a lease with Norma Jean here for my Alfred Pennyworth. It's an oil well. Great. It has an area pew on it. I've got this one here that has both an area pew and a depth pew on one lease with my Harrison Holdings lease, versus this well right here, the Adam West H23, which is an oil well. But I can see that there are multiple leases, and as I mouse over each color, I can see Clyde has an area pew. Jerry has a depth pew, and Edgar and wife Edna have both on their lease. And so this is just stuff that I can keep in mind as it comes time to renew or the lease expiration date, continuous drilling, all those kinds of things. So there's a lot you can see on here, right? All right, one of the other things we said we were going to talk about is an Exhibit A. So I've got another spreadsheet here. We've all seen Exhibit A's. Well, I guess land people seen Exhibit A's at some point. There might be some non-land people here. It's some pretty basic information. We got a lease ID, we got our lessor name, we got our legal description, we got some gross acres. They were nice and included the net acres for us. We got our recording info, of course. We know what county it's in, what state it's in, who it's with, the royalty interest, if there's an override. They gave us the filing info in another column. Okay. So that's an Exhibit A. It's not broken down by tract. It's not telling us the person's individual mineral interest. It is lease data that is necessary for knowing usually what leases are being conveyed from one party to another. So let's say I get this Exhibit A and I just need to do some evaluations of it. All right. A great way to see relationships like we saw on that first page is to do a pie chart. So let's take a look at our, you know what? I forgot to bring the spreadsheet in. I need to click on Excel workbook and I need to bring in my Exhibit A. There we go. Got to bring the data in to be able to use it. All right, so now I've got my Exhibit A data right here. And let's take a look. We've got our lease net acres that they were kind enough to include. So we're going to put that in our value. And I want to see a breakdown by state and by county. So I'm going to put my county right here. I'm going to put my state right here on top of it. Let's make that bigger. And I want to show you guys a neat little thing you can do with visuals. Let's just get my sizing right here. All right, there we go. So I can see this is mostly Texas, a little bit in New Mexico, but where'd my counties go? You see these arrows up here? You can click on your arrows, and now you can switch in between state, county, state, county. And it's just a quick way to have one visual instead of two to show two different sets of data, right? So we've got that. So that gives me my acreage. You know what? I'm going to copy and paste this. Oh, I did it twice. I'll remove that. And then I'll just drag that down, keeps them the same size. And instead of my, what's it called? Lease net acres, I'm going to do just the lease ID. Let's see how many leases there are. So now I'm just doing, well, let's see, I want to change this to count unique, count distinct. There we go. Just in case some lease got listed more than once. But now I can see, hey, most of my acreage is in Reagan, then Midland, then Glasscock. But I actually have more leases in Reeves than Midland, than Martin, as far as where I have the most people to deal with versus the most acreage to deal with, right? So that's a fun one. Let's see, maybe a good one to do would be we haven't done a, what's it called, chart, a line chart yet. Let's pull a line chart in here. Let's see our expirations on this stuff that we just acquired. And I don't need it by day. I don't need it by quarter. Let's just do year and month. And again, let's take a look at those lease net acres. All right, there it is. I just went cross-eyed there for a second. Okay, so that's crazy. I've got something going out to the year 3000 here. What that tells me is, or 3010, that tells me that something's wrong in that Exhibit A spreadsheet. Somebody fat-fingered something. Somebody typed something wrong. And I've got an expiration date. Yep, look at that. I've got an expiration date in 3010 for some of these. So somebody just typed something wrong. Those may have expired in 2010 and been fat-fingered. They may have put that data in post-2010 and their system may not have defaulted to letting them put in a prior date. I don't know. All I know is that I'm seeing that there's some data, but also, I mean, I guess I could be wrong. Maybe somebody signed a 100-year lease, but probably just a data entry thing. So we got that. You know, one way we can fix this is, I mean, we need to fix the underlying data. But just to make this chart a little bit more dynamic right off the bat, let's pull in our slicers here and let's get our lease expiration date slicer in here. And let's filter this to just a 1, 1, 2, oops, typing too many things in there. 2000, and let's just go through 1, 1, 2040. There we go. So now I can see, okay, here's more along the lines of what I'm expecting the leases to be. Here's where the bulk of them are. We need to get that underlying data fixed, but that's fun. And then we've got let's see. Oh, here's a good one when you're doing due diligence on an acquisition, right? We can do what we call a multi-row card visual. Let's make this chart just a little bit smaller so we can give this new visual some breathing room. A multi-row card. and we can pull in our lease county name as a field, and then our filing county as a field. And what that's going to tell me is I have leases in Culberson that were filed in Culberson. I have leases in Ector that were filed in Ector. I have leases in Dawson, at least one, that I don't have a filing county for. I need to make sure that that one got filed of record. I can see, let's just scroll down up. I clicked on the value and start filtering. Let's undo that. All right, just scroll here. I've got stuff in Glasscock that was filed in Glasscock. Somebody typed in the name a bunch of times. Okay, looks like everything got filed in the right places. Great. Oh, look at this. I got stuff from Midland County that was filed in Ector and Midland. I need to go see if that's got Acreage from 2 counties on it or what the deal is. All right. Last but not least, little report that I like is because we have, this is kind of going back to that first one, because we have data from Tracts and from leases, and this one is really a investigatory report, so it might be a little bit more advanced. This is a lease Tract report that I came up with, and let's just put our lease ID over here. Let's pull another table up. I'm going to make this one our Tract ID. And where's mine? Oh, you know what? I pulled that from the wrong one. Lease Tract data report. There we go. Got to be on the right spreadsheet. So we want our Tract ID. There we go. Tract ID here. And lease ID from the same spreadsheet here. And let's pull that over here. This decomposition tree is a fun little visual. And like I said, this is more investigatory than anything. So for this one, we've got our lease ID. Let's do it by analyze, by lease ID, and explain by Tract ID. Where are you? Tract ID. And what that does is it's going to show us all the tracts associated with all the leases. And then we're going to copy and paste that one, drag it over. Come on. There you go. We're going to flip these. Get our lease ID down here, Tract ID up there. Great. And what I want to do is I want to add a search function on here. I'm going to click Get More Visuals. This takes me to the Power BI kind of store, if you will, for visuals that people have developed that don't come native with it. And I like this Data Brothers text slicer. And this allows me to start searching with just typed text to or on my report. So let's see. It's added right down here. And then I can add my lease ID. I can add my Tract ID. Let's go add our well ID. Oh, you know what? I wasn't dragging those to the right place.
But I like sequels.
There we go. We've got our Tract ID, and we got our lease ID. And so now if I wanted to, I could come over here, copy my value. And let's say I wanted to search based on that lease ID. So what that's going to start doing is that's going to show me this lease only has that tract. Everything changes. If I were to come back to my tracts, I might find copy value. That tract is related to that lease. Let's come to my wells here. I've got a Bruce well in there. I can see here are all my leases and all my tracts for that well. And it just helps me start understanding the relationship between the leases and the tracts on the well. So that's just a fun way to visualize that relationship between leases, tracts, and wells. Land is 3D in oil and gas, right? You have your lease net acres versus your tract net acres. You have, lease-based systems and tract-based systems as a whole track all that so differently. But I can come in here and I can just start understanding things so much better. Here's my Alfred. I only got one lease with Alfred, but it's covering 3 tracts versus my Bruce that had multiple. So, yeah. Oh, Chris, what do you think?
I think it's wonderful, Kyle. I mean, we've had 1 hour to slap together expiration reports, net acreage counts, developed net acreage counts, looking at data anomalies. You put together extension reports. You showed some anomalies that were there through your data look through. You went and took a pew clause and mapped that out and was able to show different ones. Like we have the triple up there that has all 3 different kind of pews inside of it. I think this is a really cool ability to take special provisions and map out provisions, continuous drilling, continuous operations, continuous development, any kind of provision that you want to see map wise. You were able to take some and creating Exhibit A, looking at Exhibit A data, slicing up that Exhibit A data for acquisitions, insights and looking at things. And then lastly, you were able to do a tract to lease, lease to tract comparison by lease, tract, and well. Of course, a lot of the stuff that you did within the 1 hour, we covered a ton of things. And so as you see this data right now, you see the leases, you have many leases, many tracts tied to the Bruce. You can expand upon this. You could literally create your lease by tract by well report from Power BI. You could have an exported data sheet that you could print out to Excel and track that particular lease and what acreage is in it and what's pooled and what's unleased and leased. It really just all depends on your source data. Kyle hasn't had enough time today within our 1 hour time period to really create in-depth reports. A lot of summarizations were done today, but this is just to go to show you, what you can do when you have data on the outside. And again, that data needs to be clean, as in today we saw and have seen some anomalies in that data. Go back and check your data. Look at that data. Look at it before you start using Power BI. A lot of these things are going to stand out to you. If you are a land professional and you're building it on your own, if you are from the data side and someone's handed you data, any kind of anomalies that just seem kind of strange. And then I also highly recommend that land people and data people get together and understand each other, share some information. There's nothing better than what I get out of spending my time with Kyle and his data team, is to understand what they need to do, what they look for, how they build things, and then give them an understanding of why and what I'm doing certain things for. Why do I want to see producing versus non-producing? What is a strange extension amount of money that could be on there? Also, something that Kyle and I talked about while building this webinar was the kind of system that you have. Whether you have a lease-based system or a contract-based system, whether you have a tract-based system. We even start to see some that are kind of unit-based or well-based. And then some that are ownership-based systems. Understanding your source of data will allow you to know what you can build here. If you're using a contract-based system, you're going to have repeatable information by there. You cannot sum your net acreage. You never will be able to do that. So you're going to need to be able to work through your data and teach your data people what to do with your source information data. As in with tract-based data, you could sum net acres, but you have multiple leases with single tracts that are inside of the system, and a lot of times by mineral ownership. So feel free to reach out to Intellese at any time. Feel free to reach out to Kyle or myself. Everybody that joined in today, we've had quite a bit of attendees on here today. You have our LinkedIn, you have our contact information. We're more than happy to have these conversations with everybody. And honestly, if you just feel like you can't do it yourself, Intellese does offer these services, so you can come to us and we can help you build out your particular, what I like to call dashboards or cockpits or just insights to information. And even more so, take that gigantic Excel spreadsheet that Kyle showed you from the beginning and kind of break it up into tranches that are maybe easier to understand by using Power BI. So, Kyle, if you don't have anything else, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. We try to do these once a month. Please be on the lookout for future webinars. We'll be posting on LinkedIn. We'll have our YouTube channel. And again, you can reach out to Kyle or myself, Chris Pettigrew, anytime you want to. We'd be more than happy to have conversations around data, around land, around anything energy and oil and gas. So thanks, Kyle, for your time. I really appreciate you putting this together. I think you did a great job. And thank you, everybody, for joining us here today. Have a wonderful week.